Hey, Jack.
Hey, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good.
How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Caffeine?
Dr. Pepper.
If you just have a seat, you make some opening remarks about yourself and why you're applying. 2 or 3 minutes, that'd be great.
Thank you, President, members of the City Council. I think the reason I applied is a very good reason, and it's a vested interest that I have in the school system, and that's my 7th grader. I have a son that's at Bumpus right now. I believe that I'm qualified. Y'all have in front of you or submitted with my application is a resume, but I also refer to it as a CV. And in there, what I do and have done since 1993 is I'm what you refer to as a child advocate. It is a specialty in the law that I practice, where all I do is work on behalf of the best interests of the child. I prosecute currently now in Tuscaloosa, but I was in the Bessemer Division and then was on the bench doing presiding over juvenile cases, and all of it was family law. One point in the resume, one of my duties as a children's advocate from the DA's perspective is I'm also am the chairperson of a multidisciplinary team, and that's mandated by law. And I was that in Bessemer, and I'm doing that in Tuscaloosa. And when you talk about MDT, that's the acronym. Every area, I think y'all find, has acronyms. We're pulling on at a round table when we're talking about a child. You'll have someone from possibly the schools. That's how I know Marion Kellogg, and we have overlapped with some of our kids. You'll have counselors, educators, law enforcement, I'm trying to think of all the numerous, DHR, and we all pull around and make a decision, whatever it is, in that case, pertaining to a specific child. I look at the school board as being a member of the school board as extending that role, because we, as the city council, the school board, and the businesses, we're all one really multi-discipline team. We're all focused on the good of the city and what benefits our children. And of course, I want the best education for my son, and that's the reason that I chose to live in Hoover.
You know roughly how many students are in the Hoover school system?
Currently, approximately 13,700.
I know how many school buildings we have in the system, not counting the offices.
Including Crossroads at 17.
You have an idea what the annual budget of the school system is?
Let's see, what is this? For 2015, it is set out at about 166 million, a little over 166 million.
You have a feel for what the total amount of reserves in the school system is?
I do. Right now, with the 2015 budget, anticipating to end with a reduction of 85,300,000, whereas just a few years ago, well, several years ago, it was 150 million.
You said a reduction of 85 million or down to?
Down to.
It was 150.
It was 150.
What do you see as the role of the school board member?
It's printed out, and it's that's where I think with being a lawyer, and being a lawyer, you know about policy, and we're taught that for first class in legal research. But the primary responsibility of the board is to establish, review, and revise policy for the schools.
How does that differ? What's the role of the superintendent?
Well, the superintendent is our chief executive officer, and he will be the secretary, as well as he would be making motions and requesting the board's approval. And he will pretty much, like the CEO, work as a CEO just as with any large corporation does with their board of directors.
Questions from the council?
What do you see as the major challenges for the school system right now?
Right now is that we're gonna be looking at less money, and we still, our population and students is still growing. We have, looks like I know, not looks, I know, because I live in Russet Woods, and familiar, or went to school, my son went to school with a lot of, at Deer Valley. So that case, I know a lot of Lake Cyrus moms. And they're friends of mine, and our children now are together at Bumpus, and so I know that issue's out there. I also, like I said, we're looking for a superintendent. I'm not sure if that will be done by the time the new board member will be sworn in or appointed. But looks like we're gonna have to be cutting, just as what the state's having to do right now, because we borrowed from the rainy day fund, and we'll have to figure out where those cuts need to go. The superintendent will, and then propose it to us.
Judge, go ahead.
In your resume, I was struck by your initiative of beginning various programs for the youth. You began the First Girls Only, began the Bessemer Fatherhood Initiative Program, began the First Bessemer Teen Court. What do you see as any programs that, from your knowledge, would be or due to begin within the Hoover school system as it applies to the students that we have now?
And let me tell you this, one thing about Hoover that I have the benefit of seeing as prosecuting cases from the Bessemer division, as well as being a judge out in that division, is that we're very fortunate in what we have in our school system. And you don't appreciate, I guess, what you have until you see what others don't. And I've seen what others do not have. So for me to say to extend some of these programs, that they are available, I believe they're still being maintained, I'm not sure. But these were done, I'll make a note, with a reduction in the state budget at the time. And when I noted in my resume that I believe that the citizens of Hoover are gracious and will step out and do volunteer work, a lot of these programs that I began did not have funding. Initially, we had to go out and look for some grants, and then when those dried up, it was a lot of volunteers that stepped in. With Hoover, what I have seen with work with is the Law Academy. Our academies are great. It's not only just the sports and the arts. I'm concerned some of my child doesn't necessarily fall into the brackets of either one of those. And so what about those children that might not necessarily be musical or be the star athlete? But I want him to make sure that everybody knows who these children are. And that's one thing I think our academies will do, or do. They reach out. There's so many different opportunities. We still have the team approach that goes through middle school. And as a mom, I'm worried about him when he goes to the 9th grade. I want to make sure, I'm not sure how, I think it's what, 2,800 students at Hoover High School, so I am concerned about that. Make sure our kids, they're all known. And I do know we do have a lot of diversity and English as a second language. And those kids too, we need to make sure that people know who they are and make sure they're a part of all these programs.
Judge, you just mentioned diversity. In one of your answers, you talk about the diversity of our population, and you wrote that is a cause for celebration. That was very interesting. Could you expound on that a little bit? You hit it a little bit. But,
Well, I'd like to take credit that I drafted that, Mr. Skelton, but in the governing principles that I looked and reviewed, and even before I knew that this position was coming available, and it sets out our beliefs. And one of those beliefs, after the mission, the vision, the beliefs, is diversity in the classroom as a cause for celebration. As a reader of the news, it's always feeling things, but it seems that we're saying that we are not diverse and that we do not accept diversity. I love Hoover because you can take my son's K-5 pictures through 4th grade, his class picture, and that is a snip of the world right there. And they don't know any difference. This generation's amazing. And if you ask them that right now, if you take these boys and girls, 7th and 8th graders, they're not going to know what we're talking about. So they all different beliefs, different faiths, different races, different nationalities, and they're all. I meet the child as they walk in my door. Usually, drink all my Dr. Peppers, but you know.
With that comes a very large responsibility and obligation for the city schools. Do you think we're meeting those challenges? Or how would you improve them if you thought there were some shortcomings?
I do, from what I'm seeing, and I know there's certain numbers that I've read about, but I am accepted as a member of the board. I'm sure there's a lot more detailed information that I will have access to and be more familiar with, but from a parent and from what I'm seeing, I believe that Hoover is very open-armed and encompassing and taking all these children in and creating programs and making sure that the parents are brought in, because these parents, a lot of them don't speak English, and I'm not talking about just that area. There's so many special needs. I have some friends that have children that are in special ed programs, and they think Hoover is great, and they sought out Hoover to live in for that reason.
Thank you, Judge.
Mr. President, Judge, as far as the time factor, the school board members can
Probably put in a lot of time during the month. You feel like you have that time? Is your schedule flexible enough?
I'd actually talked to, when I saw that the application was, y'all were accepting applications, I talked to my new boss, Lynn Head. She's a DA in Tuscaloosa, and I made sure that she was on board with me. And also, most of my cases are going to be before Chief Malone, Chuck Malone, and he too is aware. Matter of fact, today they know we had a docket today, and I stayed home, made sure all my cases are taken care of. I think all of y'all are parents, and do we ever have enough time in the day? And I like to stay busy. And, you know, the alternative is to have to clean my house, and I don't want to have to clean my house. So,
have you been able to attend any PTO meetings, school board meetings?
I did at elementary and intermediate school, and I have only one at Bumpus. And the one thing at Bumpus, all that I was aware of is just one so far. I'm sure that there's one been set, but I haven't received the notice of it. I'm a member and join every year. Like I said, we have the team approach still, and so I'm fortunate, and I've got a great team. I have I don't want to call her baby teachers because she's great, a young teacher right out of college, and I don't want to refer to other teachers as a senior teacher, but a veteran teacher, let's say. And so I've got a great group that are on their hall, and I've had to meet with them and they've guided us, and they have this thing called ETA. I keep wanting to call it estimated time of arrival, but it actually stands for something else. But it's where they go in early to school, and they have teachers that are there to help them with whatever subjects they may have a problem in. It's essentially tutoring. And then there's actually that same program that takes place during the week, a couple times a week. So benefited from that. Not me, but our family has.
Thank you.
Judge, your husband is a previous board member, served several terms. There was a certain amount of, I guess, during a 5-year appointment, whether it's one appointment or 2 appointments or whatever, at some point there's going to be issues within the community. And he had his share during his time. And I think overall he did a good job, but there are going to be those within the community that if you are chosen, that they're going to say that you're nothing but a third or fourth term for Bill Vetch. How are you going to respond to that?
I'm so glad that you asked me that question, because I did not necessarily want to start with that, because I do have to live with him, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. But
Really?
yeah, so he
Right
actually
behind
has to
that wall,
come.
listen, I don't believe
Yeah,
it.
he actually has to come, and I said, "Oh no," because I might be talking about you. Did not tell him that part. If y'all look at my resume, my CV, it's Jill Ganus. I love my husband, and he's given me the best gift in the world, and that's my son. But I was Jill Ganus and a child advocate before I met Bill. And Bill loves the city of Hoover. I will not find anybody, any citizen in this city that loves Hoover more than my husband does. Now, I will also say, I don't know probably many husbands that have received 2-page single-spaced letters from their wife through the mail objecting to things that they did on the school board. And my husband can say that he did. On what issues now I won't necessarily bring up, but they were ones that I did not like the direction he was going, and he kept his direction and I kept my views. So we are definitely separate individuals. I have noticed that just when I'm looking at that they're leaving out Ganus and Jill Vetch, and that's fine. I'm not ashamed of that, but I have my own career, and sure there will be disagreements, and there were when he was on the board with what he and I thought, but he was the one that sat in the seat. No, this is not an extension. I did tell him about it. I think men sometimes with us wives, y'all may think you're listening, but you're not just nodding. So he might not have really appreciated the fact that I was saying that I was about to do this.
I'm glad you don't have a gavel right
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, I left it home. But and he's like, you were serious after someone called him. I said, yes, I was serious. It's already drafted. So I had the application in the resume. So I do think individually, and I do think apart, although I do go to him just about even my cases that the approach I have a couple current cases I have going right now, because he's a really good trial lawyer, and y'all know Bill's personality. People know us
Rather
when
docile soul.
Pardon?
Rather docile soul.
Yeah, he's real quiet and reserved. But I hope to not be drawn up if I'm appointed by Stannis, but he's moved, I think, to Chicago. But I think Bill made for a good character there at one point. But thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you very much, Judge.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate y'all calling me Judge, but you can call me Jill.
Maintain your independence.
Oh, I try, Admiral. Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Bain.
Hello. How are you?
Good. You'd like to open with a couple minutes about who you are and why you're running?
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Christy Bain, and I know, as you know, I'm interested in the position on the school board. As far back as when I was in college and was an elementary school major, I can remember my professor singing praises about Hoover City Schools. how they use innovative practices and had success working with diverse students. Hoover was ahead of its time with introducing some number talks to teach number sense, and now there's a video that is used in professional developments all over the state that was filmed at South Shades Crest Elementary. Part of our coursework in college required us to visit and observe the wonderful things happening in Hoover schools. So when I found out I was pregnant with my first child, I knew I wanted to move to Hoover because I wanted my kids to grow up going to Hoover City Schools. We have been very happy with everything that's happened at the Hoover City Schools and the quality of education our children have received. We are even part of a small rezoning of Russet Woods a few years ago. And while everyone else was in an uproar, I was calm and stated that Hoover City Schools, all of Hoover City Schools are great. It doesn't matter which one, they're all good. But fast forward to the past 2 years. 2 big issues have come to shed a negative light on our beloved school system: the buses and the rezoning at Trace Crossings. Hoover has made national news on both of these issues. I would like to see Hoover's reputation restored, because the quality of education is still there. I realize that the budget is a huge issue, as it is with every school system in the state right now, and tough decisions have to be made. But I feel that some things, such as eliminating bus service, needs to be fully researched before bringing a proposal to the public. I'm all for transparency, but research on how eliminating bus service would impact property values and the city as a whole should have been looked at before there was a public outcry and before the city made national news. In the same respect, the rezoning proposal earlier this year was not fully researched before bringing it to the public. And while I know that rezoning is a necessary evil, as my kids were rezoned, it does need to be addressed delicately. It's hard on the children to change schools once they have started school, especially when they have not moved. I feel that my experience as an educator in 2 neighboring school systems and as a substitute teacher in Hoover gives me a unique perspective. I know what it takes to educate our young people and what all the unsung heroes of the school, such as the janitors and the luncheon workers and the office workers, do on a daily basis. I know how tight budgets are and can help look for ways to tighten the budget on these tough times without impacting our students. Lastly, I have a vested interest in Hoover City Schools because I want the best education for my own kids.
Thank you. Do you know how many approximate students we have in our school system?
Not off the top of my head, I know it's a lot.
You know how many school buildings we have as far as individual schools?
I could probably count them because I know all the names.
Okay.
I could, let's
Do
see.
you have a rough idea of our school budget yearly?
It's ginormous.
Do you have an idea of the amount of reserves in the school system, total reserves?
I went to a meeting and it was discussed. There's a fair amount of reserves, but it's not a whole lot. It was enough to get, I think, a few months if we didn't have any tax income, but not enough to sustain a full year.
Okay, do you understand what the role of a school board member is? Tell us what your perception is.
My perception has changed over the past few weeks. They work with the superintendent. My understanding is they approve, they take proposals from the superintendent and central office staff and either approve them or disapprove them and research them.
What do you understand the role of the superintendent to be?
He oversees the school system, he or she.
Questions from the council?
Ms. Bain, Mr. President, you mentioned prior experience with a rezoning and that you were one of the parents that was okay with it. Are you talking about the rezoning from South Shades Crest to Deer Valley that affected quite a few students?
Russet Woods from Deer Valley to South Shades Crest, yes.
Okay.
And that was a few years ago, not the most recent where they talked about it.
Yeah.
But it was a smaller, much smaller
one, but some of the South Shades Crest students were rezoned to Deer Valley.
It was the other way. It was Deer Valley students were rezoned to South Shades Crest.
I think at one point there was some other reason.
That was
Yeah.
before we even moved to Hoover.
Okay. My question was, some of those parents that really vocalized opposition, to the move from South Shades Crest to Deer Valley. Now have the position, they don't want to be rezoned from Deer Valley to back to South Shades Crest or another school. How would you kind of consider that, and when y'all are developing plans for rezoning, and the fact that very few times when rezoning comes up are 100% of the people happy?
No, they're not going to be 100% happy. I think as hard as it was, the way they handled our rezoning was probably the best way. Financially, it didn't make as much sense, but it was such a small rezoning. They took the kids that were in like 3rd and 4th grade, they could stay. And then the kids, the younger kids, they had enough time. And I told my son, I'd be honest, I would speak from the heart. I told my son when we went through this, when you get to Brock's Gap, you will know, you will have your friends from Deer Valley, you will have your friends from South Shades Crest, and you'll be ahead of the game. You'll have more friends than anybody else. And that's probably what I would tell parents, is you're giving your child a better background now. Now, they're probably not going to buy into it completely. I know that. You're not going to make 100% of them happy. There's always going to be somebody who's not. And
you may not even make 50% of them happy.
yeah, as we found out this year.
Yeah.
But sometimes those hard decisions have to be made. You have to look at the numbers, especially when a school's overcrowded. I've been in that case, been the teacher in that classroom.
And that's probably one of the most sensitive issues that the board addresses.
You can't keep cramming kids into a building where the classrooms are sand busting at the seams.
Thank you.
Additional question? Mr. President, Ms. Bain, in your statement here about the critical issues facing the schools, you state that you will contribute looking at the budget to try a way to balance it without impacting children. If you have a budget that's not balanced, how do you balance it without impacting children?
You have to look at the areas that are not essential. Sometimes Hoover has, as much as I'm all for it, we have a one-to-one initiative of where each child has a Chromebook. Well, we went into that before I think they fully researched it once again, and we start off with iPads. Well, now those iPads don't work anymore, and they're all collecting dust. And so we took the iPads away, and now they all have Chromebooks. That's a huge chunk of our budget to buy an iPad for every high school student in the Hoover City School District. And then to have 3 years later, just have them sitting somewhere collecting dust because they're not usable anymore.
Thank you.
Green?
You say you're substituting something out?
Not right now. I have in the past.
Substitute last year?
No, because I worked in Shelby County last year.
And as far as the time will be needed to reflect this position, do you feel like you have the amount of time? Is your schedule now flexible?
Right now I'm teaching preschool, but I have turned in my resignation for that, so I'm flexible.
I do have some good news for you.
Okay.
The time requirement that
It's
you
not,
answered
yeah, I
is
figured
not
that out.
full-time and it's not 40 hours a week.
I figured that out after I filled that out.
It can get, on up
It can
there.
get
It's quite
there.
a commitment, but it's not quite that large of a time commitment.
I've known recently it to be 18 hours in 1 week.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Question.
Can't reach him. Additional questions from the council? What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the school system? What's your solution to them? If we haven't talked about anything.
It's keeping the quality of education. And budgets are tight, because I've seen that happen in other school systems, and I know Jefferson County's talking about laying teachers off right now. And that's hard. But we have to figure out the perfect balance of keeping our children in the best quality of education, keeping our quality of teachers where they are, because we do have quality teachers. And with the money we have.
Mr. President, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Bain, you talked in your application and even this afternoon about reputation. Do you truly believe it's a reputation issue? Perhaps that the community, if they have a negative perception of our school system, it's one they've just gleaned from media reports? Or do you think it's truly an issue where parents of our 14,000 students are truly dissatisfied?
I think in some areas, I think they feel like now they really have it. Trace Crossings is not going to, or Lakeside is not going to be rezoned. I've heard from some parents that they feel like the reputation of Trace Crossings is not good. So it is out there. It probably depends on what school and what feeder pattern you're in, whether or not you hear it. I think as an overall for the whole school system.
But I still hear you talk about reputation, so you would suggest that the folks, the
Some
parents at Trace Crossings are satisfied.
Yes.
So it is a perception.
It is a perception. I see the quality of education there. But I do think it is a perception of, and I do think some of it comes from the parents and some of it comes from the media. And I think, honestly, I don't know why little Hoover City schools made national news, but it did. And it was a little upsetting.
Of course, without proper communication, perception to many people is reality.
Right.
Okay, any additional questions? I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good. If you would, just take a few minutes and tell us about yourself and your interest in the application of the position.
Okay. Well, my name is Laura Kleckley. I'm currently an engineer at Alagasco, a compliance engineer at Alagasco. I've lived in Hoover for 11 years, and I have 3 children, 2 that attend Berry Middle School and 1 that attends Greystone Elementary, and I'm about to have 1 that will actually attend Bain Park next year, so I will have 3 children in all 3 schools. My main interest for being here today is because of my 3 children and their education. When my husband and I decided to move to Hoover 11 years ago, we could have gone anywhere, but we chose Hoover for the reputable school systems and the convenience that the bus system offered for a 2 working parent family. Recently, or at least in the last year, both of these reasons are starting to become endangered. And I feel like the parents are starting to lose faith in the school board, in the school system, and in the city of Hoover. And I feel like if I'm appointed to the school board position that I can assist in finding ways to unify the parents and the school board again. My second reason is that I believe my experience that I have gained in the past working on federally mandated consent decree projects for Jefferson County can help, I can be a valuable asset to the school board. And lastly, with the departure of Mrs. Frazier, I believe that the eastern side of the community is losing a great advocate. And I believe that the board should be a balanced reflection of the community, and that if the school, the city council does not put somebody on there that represents the eastern side of the community, that we are at risk of having no direct representation on the board.
Okay. Do you have any idea how many students are in the Hoover school system?
There's a little bit more than 13,000 students in the Hoover school system.
How many actual schools we have in the system?
We have 16 schools, and then we have Crossroads.
Do you have an idea what the annual school budget is?
Right now for fiscal year 15, I believe you're operating on approximately $166 million budget.
Do you have some idea what the total reserves of the school system are?
Before fiscal year 2015, it was about $77 million.
What do you see as the role of the school board member?
As I said in my application, the role is that you need to be able to keep the best interest of each and every Hoover school system, each and every Hoover City student in your thoughts. I think that you need to be able to solve the critical issues that are facing the Hoover school system. And by solving those, you need to be able to keep the integrity of the education that you're providing those students intact.
What do you see as the role of the school superintendent?
Well, that's a hard one. The role of a school superintendent is to make decisions. It will not make lone decisions for the school system, but make decisions based on what's the word I'm looking for? Based on what the board members, I'm sorry, I can't think of the word, I've just lost it. Based on what the board members, not tell you what to do, but what they, I'm so sorry. I cannot think of the word. I just had my brain just completely went blank.
Well, he's the chief administrative officer of the school system.
Well, right, but while he's the chief administrative officer, he also has to listen to what the school board tells him, what they recommend to him. I don't think he's the one that makes the decisions all by himself. He runs the school system. He's kind of like a principal for a school, but he's a principal for all 16 schools in Crossroads.
Additional questions from the council?
And Mr. President, yes, ma'am. In fact, you addressed one of my questions about demographics.
Mm-hmm.
How important on a priority level do you think that is if you weren't selected and we didn't have any, that we didn't appoint a board member from the eastern side of town? Obviously, the board is heavily loaded from residents that live in the western side of town. Do you feel like you wouldn't have a fair or equal position if just because someone didn't live east of I-65 with any issue you may have with your schools or the board and the superintendent? Do you
Yeah.
feel like it would be hard as good?
Yes, I do. I feel that's something I feel very strongly about. I mean, the eastern side of the community represents about 4,000 students, and I think that you'll talk about community outreach on your application. I think you would not be reaching an entire side of the community. I mean, that's not to say, I also talked about, going out and having community meetings and things like that, but I'm in the schools. I'm available to parents that maybe parents that live on the western side of the community may not be as available. I'm going to go to Spain Park High School football games. I'm going to go to extracurricular activities at those schools. And I feel like parents would be more apt to talk to another parent from those school systems. And I also stated in my application that a problem that might face a Spain Park High School student could be completely different from a problem that might face a Hoover High School student. And I think it's important as a parent that our voice needs to be heard. I mean, you would lose, it's 4,000 students. I mean, we're not asking, and I agree that the board should have more representing the western side, obviously, but we should have at least one, just one. I mean, we're not asking for more than one, we're not asking for half. I think just one would be sufficient.
Follow up if I can. What kind of issue just for my curiosity, might affect a Spain Park student that necessarily wouldn't affect the Hoover High School?
Well, maybe not students, but maybe just the general area. Like, I know that right now Hoover High School has, I think, about 2,500 students, maybe 2,600 students as compared to Spain Park, who only has about 1,500 students. Well, you're going to have crowding issues, overcrowding issues, just being in a larger school environment, and it's going to be completely different than what Spain Park might. That's just one difference that you might see.
Thank you.
All right. You mentioned here that in your application that parents have lost confidence in the school board and the school board members are out of touch with the parents. Could you
I think that there's been some decisions made by the school board members in the past year and a half without any input from the parents. And it seems like a lot of the decisions have been made hastily. And I think one way to maybe do it a little bit better, and when I worked for Jefferson County, I dealt with this a lot. I mean, we were under consent decree. We, at the very beginning when we were having growing pains, we would do projects and we would just do it without notifying the public, just go out there and do it. And it tended to make a lot of people angry. And I got a lot of angry phone calls in my office. Well, once we kind of figured it out and we went out in the community and we started talking to the parents and we asked them for their input, and maybe we didn't always use their input, or maybe every once in a while we used one or two ideas, it seemed to pacify the public, and it made them happier, and it made my job easier, and it made the projects go smoother. So I think that the school board needs to get out to the schools more. They need to hold public meetings, small community meetings, go to the different schools, shake hands, introduce yourselves, ask them, what are your issues? What are you facing this year? And just ask them. It may not be anything that you can resolve, maybe nothing that you can do at all, but just for the simple fact that you're sitting there and you're listening to them and you're talking to them one-on-one, it's just going to make it go a lot easier. And I think parents want to know that the school board cares and that they care about their children.
Mr. President, if I could follow up on that.
Sure.
You talk about decisions the school board made. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they've never taken a vote on rezoning.
No, they haven't. No, I'm not really saying decisions they've made. I'm just saying it seems like some of the ideas that they've proposed, is how I should probably say it, the ideas they've proposed, or the superintendent. It just means that things that have been put out there just haven't been necessarily presented in the right way. And so I understand what you're saying about the superintendent, but that's not necessarily how the parents see it. They see the superintendent and the school board, I think, or at least I do, kind of as one entity. I mean, they're kind of working together, and I'm pretty sure, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure the school board knows what the superintendent is going to do. I mean, if they don't know, then there's not enough communication between the two. So I guess that's what, I just feel like maybe the ideas could have been presented in a better way.
Mr. President? Yes, sir. Now, you mentioned,
In your opinion, the most critical issue facing the school system is the budget constraints.
Correct.
And your recommendation is that these issues can be resolved by a balanced budget. How do you go about that?
Well, in the last year,
how would you go about that without impacting the programs we have now and also the students?
I think that I think the school system is working towards a balanced budget right now. I think they're working very hard at a balanced budget right now, and I think they've worked on decreasing their spending. My hope is that the city council and the school board can sit down together and work together and try to find some alternative funding sources to increase revenue in the school system. Not necessarily writing them a blank check, but like one idea that I had was maybe utilizing the Hoover City School Foundation a little bit better. I know that for some reason I get a lot of emails about the Vestavia City Schools Foundation all the time. I don't know why. I don't know how I got on their email list, but I've gone on there and I've looked at their website, and I've been very impressed with what they've done. And I know that the city of Vestavia supports that foundation, and they give that foundation a lot of advertisement. And I would hope that maybe the city of Hoover could do the same for our foundation. And maybe we can, find some ideas to bolster those donations to that foundation. I know Vestavia, the Vestavia Foundation, I think it was 2 years ago, with the last numbers I got, they gave $60,000 in grants to the different schools $20,000 of that was given to the Board of Education in a grant to help summer training for their teachers. So maybe I know we've had some budget cuts. Maybe some of the teachers of the schools if we can bolster that money, all the donations given to the foundation, maybe some of the schools can start to apply for more grants, and maybe we can make up for some of that loss.
Thank you.
Mr. President, as you know, the school board will be interviewing very soon for their superintendent. Right off the top of your head, do you have any characteristics of the superintendent you'd like to see the superintendent have?
I think he has to have wonderful problem-solving skills. I think he needs to be a good negotiator. I think he needs to be very good at public speaking. I think he needs to be a great listener, open-minded. Those are just some skills, some things that, those are more personality traits, but.
Honest, integrity?
Yes, those two.
Mr. President, getting back to your concern about representation, have the current board members, have they done anything that makes you feel that they have not represented the entire school system rather than east or west?
Not to my knowledge. Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
If we were to have the National Teacher of the Year and live in Hoover but work for the school system, but that person lived in Lake Cyrus, would you prefer that you be selected because you're on the east side of town over he or she?
No, not necessarily.
You had mentioned one of the previous questions about the board making recommendations to the superintendent. I just want to make sure that you're aware that the board can only act on the things the superintendent brings before the body itself. The board cannot bring its own recommendations to be voted on. It has to flow through the superintendent. So he or she is a very critical part of not just day-to-day, but all the meetings.
Oh, the superintendent. That's what you're talking about. Oh, yes, I'm very much aware of that. I think I was just saying that I'm assuming the superintendent and the board members have an open communication.
Yeah.
They know what the right hand knows what the left hand is doing at all times.
That's very
What was
true.
what I was saying.
That's very true.
Yes.
Apparently I was just a little confused. Thank you.
Yeah.
Additional questions from the council? Thank you for coming. Thank you for your application.
Well, thank you so much for giving me your time today.
For the golden years.
Good afternoon.
How y'all gentlemen doing?
How about you, sir?
Great, great.
Good to have you with us today.
Mr. Wallace, would you just like to take 2 or 3 minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're applying?
All right, sure. There are 3 reasons for my interest in being part of the school board. First of all, I appreciate your distinguished time to hear me. First, I have an opportunity to get back to the community. I'm now in a place in my career and business that I have that flexibility that I can do that. I come from a family of people that serve the community as well as public service. So that's something I'm interested in. Number 2, I believe I can help bridge the gap between the educational community and the business community, since I've had experience in both. And I believe I could be a very viable asset to the school board. Number 3, I want to foster a environment of proactiveness within the board, so that a lot of times some of the negativity associated with actions and so forth, it's not about, you know, what has happened, but, you know, having the opportunity to get people together and before a decision's made and everything. As far as my resume and experience, I've actually had 9 years of experience as an educator, 5 years in Fairfax County school system. It's right outside of Washington, D.C., in Virginia. There I was a school counselor, so I was always working to bridge the gap between administrators, teachers, working collaboratively, you know, even social workers, counselors, sometimes police, and parents, and then of course, most importantly, the whole reason what the school board exists is for the children. So I worked in there. I worked in 2 different schools, and 2 of those were top 50 in the U.S. News and School Report for you know, challenging its students. I also spent 2 years in Durham Public Schools, also as a school counselor there. And recently, here I worked in Fairfield school system, where I was contracted to work in an alternatives program for 2 years, as well as I worked for Jefferson County as a juvenile detention officer. So I've worked with all types of kids, from those that have been in jail to those that have been, you know, SAT scores going to Harvard and so forth. So I bring a wealth of experience in working with students. As far as what I do as a business owner, I call myself a business financial consultant, and basically what I do is I help small businesses get access to capital. So as far as helping the board access and find alternative financial solutions, that's something that I do every day. So I believe I can bring that, especially, well, you guys, I have to tell you how the state is treating us now. So, you know, that just kind of funnels down. So we have to look for opportunities to bridge the gap between the community and find alternative solutions for our school board.
You have an idea how many students are in the Hoover school system?
Yes, well, I know just Hoover high school itself has about 2,600 students, and then Spain Park is about 1,700, and then you add up with all the middle schools and elementary schools up to about 5,000 students.
Do you know how many schools we have in the system?
Yes, we had two high schools, one intermediate, two middle schools, and if I have this correctly, 4 elementary schools.
Do you have an idea what the annual budget of the schools are?
Last I looked, the last budget I saw was about $7.6 million. Is what I saw.
Do you have an idea what the school reserves
are? Now that I'm not quite sure, but I know state law requires a certain percentage at all time. I want to say it's about $1 million, $2 million.
What do you see as the role of the school board member?
It's educational policy. So basically teachers, administrators, superintendent, they're basically act out with the board's policy, educational policy.
How does that differ from the role of the school superintendent?
Well, superintendent, I would say more like a executive. It's more like, like here for you guys policy, and then the mayor is the executive branch of the system.
Additional questions for the council?
Mr. President, Mr. Wallace, I assume it was you that made the application
to be a school counselor in the Hoover City Schools?
Yes.
How long ago, what year was that?
That's when I first moved in town. I want to say that was 2004.
Okay. All right, thank you. And one other question, with your background now in the financial arena, I assume you have some pretty good experience with budgets and how to read a financial statement and that kind of thing. Could you explain a little bit of your background on that?
Yes, sir. I mean, what my role is in helping small businesses get access to capital. I mean, and I have to explain to an underwriter, here's how they financially can support the financial request that they're asking for. So, I mean, if I'm unable to convey that to them, I don't get paid.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Wallace, one of your answers here, you say that you'd like to be on the school board to bridge the gap between the business community and our schools.
Yes.
Could you give us some examples of that?
Yes, certainly. And I don't want to say that the school system is not doing that at all, but I could just based on my people that I know within the community that own businesses here within the community, I could say, hey, the school system needs you. This program over here at this high school is doing this. Can you come in and lend your services? Or hey, we need some help. I mean, basically just picking up the phone and calling people and say, hey, this school system needs your help, and maybe connecting that to someone within the school system, or telling the principal and saying, hey, I know this person, maybe you might want to call this person to help, bring these resources to your school.
And have you been able to attend any school board meetings?
Not recently.
What about PTO meetings?
Yes. My daughter attends Rocky Ridge, so I can go for her.
Thank you.
Mr. President? Yes, sir. Mr. Wallace, you mentioned that your opinion to increase participation by parents in children's education is through various technology. The school system uses a lot of technology now to correspond with parents and things of this nature. How would you improve on that? What other technology would you bring in?
Well, I think we would just use it more effectively because, prime example, when the weather was bad, I always get my wife and I.
That weatherman never is right, is he?
No, never really like it. I mean, but it's just interesting how I get it via email, text message, voicemail. Just that there's various activities that we want the community to participate. I mean, I would like us to do more of that. Especially when there's critical issues that are coming up within the school system.
Thank you. What do you see the critical issues being today with Hoover City Schools?
That's funding. Funding is the primary thing. I mean, for me, if it's rezoning, if it's hiring a superintendent, if it's the busing, all of that has to do with funding. And you guys roll with the city all the time. You have people plugging at you. Where do we provide resources for the city? I mean, that's the same thing that the school board has to make a decision on for the school system all the time. So funding is primary, and then for me too, it's just communicating. Say, hey, we have money for this. We don't have money for that. I mean, it's just black and white. I mean, what do you want us to do? Bring it out of thin air? And just be black and white about it and explain to the community this is what we have.
How would you propose that we solve this critical issue?
Well, like I was talking about before, it's a facet of just communicating that. First, use the technology we have to communicate that, making it known to the community. I mean, you know, there's, I mean, we have a lot of people that are really interested in the school system now that we haven't had in a long time. I mean, and I think that's a great thing now. We need to utilize that momentum that we have, and communicate and continue to communicate that. I mean, we had some people that got involved, organizations, that, you know, that want to know about what's going on here that never before was interested. So, I mean, now we have opportunity to bring them on board and make it known.
Thank you. Mr. President, do you pay attention to school issues on a state or federal level?
Yes, I had an opportunity being a part of Leadership Birmingham several years ago.
Do you pay any attention to the Baldwin County vote that just took place for funding for schools?
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, I've gotten emails about that because actually I have my in-laws family from that part of the area, so I've only heard one side of that, so I can't really make a comment on, you know, how that should be worked out. But
just based on how the vote occurred, do you think that makes a statement for other communities within Alabama?
Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of hard. I mean, the unique thing about Baldwin County is it's the haves and the have-nots down there. There's a real big dichotomy of what the school system serves them, or the city and government serve. So, you know, it's, you know, the communication, you know, it's a big key, and you know, if people are not getting involved, I wouldn't say it's because they don't care. They may not know how to
Am I
avail
correct that
themselves.
both initiatives were voted down?
Excuse me?
Both issues were voted down, or just the one?
I don't remember. I remember. I remember I got the email.
Oh,
but,
the two new referendums, Gene, were voted down.
There was one to renew,
Review.
and it was voted down as well. That's a community that has hundreds upon hundreds of working classmen. I just think, to me, it makes me wonder if that's not a statement that might could be made statewide, if not further. Thank you.
Additional questions? Hearing none, we appreciate you coming in.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now you guys got your break now. Don't run out too fast.
Thanks for coming in.
All right, appreciate it.